Welcome to the Ask Weldon show, episode 77. Today I'm going to do a marathon session of a bunch of different questions, just try to catch up because there's so many awesome questions that got asked in March and April, and I haven't caught up to May yet. So let's see how many I can get through, and then when I have to go, I got to go. Got to catch lunch at some point, and I'm joined, of course, today by my fans here. Lulu and Ramus Poro. I bought these for my kids, like I said on the previous show, and they don't like them. So now I'm stuck with them all day long. Okay, so let's just dive right into the questions. I don't have a preview for you on the contents of the show. I don't even know what questions I'm going to get. I'm just going to go right through like all of the ones that have been asked, basically in order. So here we go.
Kenneth asks, what would be the best training method to get Challenger knowing that I have 6 to 8 hours a day to play a league?
Okay, so you want to find some sort of training routine that is cyclical, so intense and then lower, less intense, and then intense, lower intense. You want to make sure you have a hobby that is secondary to league that feeds into it. So something like rock climbing or singing or something that involves mastery, training, getting better at something. So not a hobby like watching anime, you know what I mean? But a hobby like pursuing some sort of activity. Physical would be best. Make sure that within your training sessions you construct them well, so you're getting like 10 minutes of break between each game where you're standing up and you're doing something like push-ups or physical or just getting your blood moving. And then you want to square away your sleep. Make sure you're getting 8 hours a night, and your nutrition in terms of like making sure that you don't eat tons of bread all the time during your day, so that you just get this like sugar rush and then down. So you want to make sure you get nice balanced protein and slow carb meals, stuff like that. Okay, so you square away that away. And then what is the training method inside the training? So basically what I think would be ideal is looking at what people who are better than you do and copying them. That's the fastest method to get to anything. So just look at what the best do and copy them. So you want to spend a little bit of time on VOD analysis, looking at role models, and then you want to go play those champions, then you want to look at your VOD and see what you did wrong, and then you want to make that your training goal and then do it, quite simply. And so then you rinse and repeat. Good luck.
Marcus asks, how do you deal with depression? I've been dealing with it for around 5 years now, and it's really impacting my life.
Okay, I have never had clinically diagnosed depression. The way that I deal with depression personally, this is for me, is totally different from the way that like you probably are going to deal with depression, or somebody who's getting therapy, or somebody who's getting drugs. So the way that you deal with depression is you go ask for help. And you find out, first of all, if you need chemical help or psychological help or just like life support help. And for me, I was lucky. I didn't have like clinical depression. I didn't need to get psychological therapy help, although I am now. And so that's really nice, but I'm not necessarily having depression right now. And I didn't need chemical help because my brain wasn't that bad yet, or wasn't predisposed physiologically to be that bad. So I didn't have a lot of problems there. So I was lucky. So my two bouts of depression, maybe two. One of them was in Boston, and I did a lot of like biofeedback. So I essentially, I would like leave the house, and I had a 30-minute commute on public transit, and I would practice smiling. So I would smile the entire way for 30 minutes. Like, it's really interesting learning how to smile and contort your face in a complete, true, natural smile when you're like feeling kind of dead inside. But the result was I would get to work instead of hating life and hating me, in a completely different kind of mood. And I later learned that this has a strong psychological basis, which is cool. And then fast forward, the next time was basically, I didn't solve it, like the seasons just changed. So it became summer and my life got less crappy, and that took care of it. But then reflecting back, we're like, whoa, actually that was full-blown pretty bad. And so we were ready the next time it came around. And then that time it was a lot of gratefulness, which you can see. I recommend the 5-minute journal if you go to mindgames.gg/resources or /tools. I wish I knew which one it was. I don't even think I've made this page yet. But anyway, it'll be /resources or /tools. You can find the 5-minute journal there. I use that for my gratefulness, so I would talk through it every single morning. and it helped to kind of reset my mindset. So that's what I did. Otherwise, for me, it has to come through physical activity. So that's what I recommend.
Caleb asks, how do you get pressure to drive and focus you?
This is a really good question because this is mostly what I do. And the answer is through breath for me. I use breath to kind of like center myself and examine my internal state. So basically like start feeling nervous and jittery. Then I take a few breaths and I examine my internal state and I see this is physiological, this is emotional. Take the emotional stuff, I say, okay, that's happening. Don't really need to pay too much attention to it, just direct it. I look at the physiological stuff and I breathe and I start visualizing what I want to be excited about and how I'm taking that, and then that feeds it into pressure and adrenaline and drives me and focuses me. So that's how I do it. And that's how I train people to do it.
Noah asks, how do you find the drive to play the game and win without instant results?
I was talking about this with somebody recently. What was the context? Oh yeah, art. This guy is an artist, designer. And, he's really driven, but the sales aren't there. And so he's producing a lot of stuff. And you have to do a lot of business stuff before you ever ramp up a business. So it's like tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of work. You gotta be driven, but you get zero feedback for like years. Like what I did, I started writing mind games in 2012 for basically 2.5 years. I did tons and tons and tons and tons of work with zero results. Okay, so how do you find that drive? I think if you go back a few questions, you'll see like hate and anger and fear are big motivators. Like that has a lot to do with it. You got to find super strong emotional motivators. And that's one of the reasons that these are hard to find in like the developed world, and that you see people super motivated in other countries where their lives are on the line. It's just the way that it works. Like when your life is on the line, you're more motivated to get that drive. So for you, I would tap into very, very base emotions. Like you have to think like strongly about what you want, and you have to fight to make it important in your mind. And once the thing that you value about yourself and about your future is crystal clear, then you can pour more intensity into it. If you don't have that intensity, it's hard to keep up the drive. So if you're a pretty laid back, non-intense person, then either it has to be under the surface, or you have to like find a way to take something in your life and turn it into intensity.
Anonymous asks, how do you stay focused and learn from practicing in game?
You ought to always learn from practicing in game. How do you stay focused to keep practicing, I think is the real question, instead of tilting and just like doing random stuff. And that basically has to do with motivation. The more motivated you are, the faster you can refocus when you have something that you want. And so you have to ask yourself why you're in the game in the first place. Are you in the game to get better? Are you in the game to win? Are you in the game to have fun? Are you in the game to get better at Ezreal cues? Like, what's your motivation? Are you in the game to prove to like a family member that you have what it takes to support yourself in your hobby? So you're not going to be able to compete with somebody who's driven to like be successful no matter what if your goal is to kind of maybe get higher ranking. So your motivation is going to be lower, and you're not going to have as much focus, and you're not going to learn as much from practice or keep yourself refocused after you make a mistake. I think it's like telling. If you look at, for example, when I train LCS teams, in the gaming house when they're training, they make a mistake, it defocuses them for an extended period of time. But when they make the same mistake on stage, they're over it in like 10 seconds. They're on to the next thing because their motivation to win that game is really high. It helps them refocus quickly. So this is a simple example of how you pile on the intensity and the motivation, and it allows you to like really quickly move to the next thing you need to do mentally. So if you can get that intensity and motivation in the training environment, like you can really amplify your focus by pulling it away from the annoying thing back to the present moment, like more swiftly. And I worked on this with one player in particular. When I started working with him, it was something like 1.5 minutes sometimes of like distracted behavior after a mistake or after an error, and we got it down to about 17 seconds, sometimes even less than 10 seconds before he was able to like refocus on the game. So that's kind of the goal, is to find your motivation and your drive, and understand that what you want to do is leave that aside while your brain's working on and get back to the task at hand.
Jason asks, how do you prevent the mentality that you're wasting time on League of Legends, even if it's just something you do for fun?
Well, see, for me, it's not a waste of time because I'm making a living at it now. So that's helpful, but it is a waste of time for me to play, actually. So I don't get to play because it'd be better for me to watch a stream of somebody else playing who's better than me now in order to coach it better. So this is the crux of it, Jason. This is the entire argument. Well, right now, competitive video games is more or less a waste of time as society sees it. And I want to prove that it's not. I want to prove that any competitive environment you can develop yourself. So the way that League of Legends is not a waste of time is if you use it as a developmental engine for your own self. Or if it's for entertainment and it's giving you good, TV, play video games, whatever. They're both fine if you want entertainment. But if you want to develop yourself, you have to get something out of it. So you have to put something into it in terms of focus and goals and work. Not necessarily like work doesn't mean unfun work. It just means like working towards something. So this is what youth sport is. This is why we do go, play soccer or football with your like local corner club team. There's no point to it. You're not going to go pro. So it's a waste of time. But people say, well, it makes you healthier, makes you play with teams better, makes you a better leader. You get good physical coordination. So like, what of those things can you find in competitive League of Legends? Well, you can find the team play. You can find the competitive drive, like you can learn how to focus, you can learn how to set goals and follow through on them, you can learn how to deal with adversity and frustration and still lead your team. You can learn how to take butterflies and turn it into desire and focus and drive. So all of these things are transferable skills. They go from one zone of life to another zone of life if you actually understand them and pull them out of that zone and put them there. So what I would say is, I would look at your game and I would say, like, what can I develop in myself that is lacking right now that I can then apply to somewhere else in my life? And I want you to think about how you can train that in League of Legends and then bring it over to, for example, your relationships or your schooling. So for me, it's like, if I can't handle some stranger online, like trolling me, how can I handle my kids, like, misbehaving? So I train my tolerance and patience in both settings, and it amplifies back into each other. It makes me a better human all around, better person all around because of that experience that I had. So you are wasting your time on League of Legends unless you're not wasting your time on League of Legends. And so find a way to not waste your time on League of Legends and you'll be good. And if it's something you do for fun, that is okay. You have to squarely put it in the fun box and divvy up time in your life for things you spend on your own pursuits of fun. There's nothing wrong with hedonism. And I think that, like, if that's what it is, then that's what it is for you.
Nicholas asks, what should I do when there's a lack of drive, and how do I increase my drive or focus?
What do I do when there's a lack of drive? Take a break. And if you're not happy with taking a break, then understand why you're not driven by your goals that you say you're driven by, even though, for example, you say you're driven by them, but then you don't have the drive and you don't want to take a break. So then there's something mixed up there. Like maybe you don't actually value the goals that you're setting. Maybe you're just pretty comfortable in life and like it's just not enough to drive you. Okay, so then how do you increase your drive or focus? That's what I said before. It's intensity. It's looking at what you value and saying, like, do I really value this or not? And if you don't value it, you have to accept that first of all and then find a way to care more.
Anonymous asks, do you have any recommendations for when you're on a winning streak and need to take a break?
I don't know. I think win streaks are super motivating and they're super fun and they bring you to a nice level of focus, and I like to take advantage of that. I think that it's easy to keep playing and learning when you're on a win streak because you're excited and you're like, okay, I'm going to continue this. I think that the moment you feel yourself relaxing and chilling out and being like, oh, blah, blah, and taking it lackadaisically, you should take a break. But if you're able to fold that winning into like, oh my gosh, this is awesome, and like intense focus and more straining and like, okay, I can't lose this now kind of pressure, putting that pressure up on you and training that, I think that's a great time to train.
Lido asks, is the optimal practice time 4 to 6 hours only for those who are elite? What about those who haven't reached elite?
The answer is it's completely individual, Lido styles. Some people can get to elite status in 4 hours because they've squared away a number of basic skills in their like age 2 to 6 range of their life that take care of some of the stuff that you don't have. You might need more hours to go more rapidly or to square away some skills that you didn't develop when you were age 2 to 4 that you need to develop now. The truth is you're training motor reflexes And if your brain sucks at rewiring them, then you need to train more hours. And if your brain is really good at rewiring them, then you need to train less hours. And focus has a big component of that, as well as sleep. So you need to experiment with how much you can tolerate and how much you can train and how much it matters, and figure out where the sweet spot is.
Nicholas asks, when trying to learn something new, is it better to go at a normal speed or start slow?
So one of those is the scaffolding pyramid method, where you master the basics, then the next level of complexity, then the next level of complexity. And the other one is like the League of Legends scrimming level, where you try to practice the whole game at once and get better at everything. So there's benefits to both, and you should be doing both. You should be doing the scaffolding thing, where you're like, okay, I really am bad at this skill, go practice it. But then you need to be putting it all together into the cognitive overload environment and trying to do it all at once as well. So it's better to mix and match than do either of those.
Anonymous asks, can you show us the best sitting posture and hands placement on the table? Why is it so important?
Why is it important? It's important for your lower back and your wrist health. Okay, so let's see here. Basically, like my chair is set up here so that, here, let me put this mic in my pocket. My chair is set up here so that I should be essentially feet flat on the ground. Okay, it's a little bit low. Feet flat on the ground, legs more or less straight, a little bit kilter. I sit forward in the chair. You don't want to support your back, so you want to basically sit upright. You don't want to have a sway back like this. You don't want to have an arch back like this. You don't want to be supported against something. You want to have it basically like straight up. In order to have a straight up back, you tighten the muscles like right here in between your crotch and your belly button, so below your belly button, above your crotch, and you tighten the ones in the lower 2 or 3 lumbar here to sway to get upright. You don't want to use these to like hold yourself upright, because you can like arch your lower back here, then hold your upper back upright, or you can like get a really pronounced sway. So you basically want to like hold upright from the base in order to get a straight back. Then you want to make sure you sit in several different positions. So you want to sometimes sit like this. You want to sometimes sit with your back still straight, but your arms resting on the table. You want to sometimes sit back and straight, and sometimes you want to sit in a sway with your back supported with a cushion. So like notice how my chair is like dynamic right now. So my feet are not on the floor, which they should be. So I have like, if I had a lumbar support, it would be perfect. But essentially the back should sway, and so you want to change positions, right, to keep the muscles active. That's important every few, 10, 15 minutes or whatever. Okay, so you get this squared away. Then your shoulders. Here's the trick for your shoulders to get them in the right position. Basically, squish them up towards your ears as high as they can go and hold them up there. Bring them backwards as far as they can go back while keeping them high. So if you have to lower your shoulders, you have to stop going back. So hold them up until you can't bring them back anymore, and then drop them straight down. And essentially, that's the neutral, natural position. Okay. And then the way that you hold them there is not through these shoulder muscles, but the ones like in the middle of the shoulder blades. And the way that you can feel the muscles that you control there is by raising one of your right arms or whatever and trying to hold your shoulder blade flat on your back. So put your hand on your shoulder blade, kind of feel it here. And then raise your arm, and you can feel your shoulder blade like kind of poking out, sliding to the right. And then I want you to hold your shoulder blade in place and not let it move, and raise your arm. So you're using muscles like here and on your blade to hold it in place. And then I want you to try to relax all the muscles except the ones right in the middle of your back here, and still hold your shoulder blade in place with everything else relaxed. And those are basically the ones that you can use to hold your shoulders up. And then wrists. So you want your wrists on the mouse to be like this, so not like this ever. So you want to approach from a lower angle and come up, which is why one of those wrist bump things on your mouse pad is so useful, because like imagine the mouse is flat on the table here, okay, and I'm coming at it at an oblique angle or an upward angle, so then my wrist is like arching this way. So I want to be coming at it from a downward angle and have a pad there so that my hand is like hanging down from my arm instead of like me going like this. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's why an adjustable desk is really important, because you have to, if you want your chair in the right spot, then this desk is too low. Like if my chair's in the right spot, then this desk is too low. It needs to be like up 1 more centimeter for my perfect, or 1 more inch, right, for my perfect height. Right, Lulu? Yes, that's correct. Okay, so basically like I would use Ramus, right? my thing right there. Okay, then you want to make sure the mouse is large enough to fill up the whole hole in your hand, okay? And rest with your fingers. So you don't want to have to hold your hand up, and you don't want to have to hold your fingers up. You want them to you want the hand to rest on the mouse here, and you want your fingers to rest on the mouse here. So it's going to be in the front half of your hand, and you should support this area. Okay, so you have to try mice before you buy them. Do not buy them online. Go to the store, try them out, make sure that the fit is good. You need to get a big enough mouse so that it fills that. Those little itty bitty mice that you travel with and you click on YouTube, or so you click on USB, like it's a USB Wi-Fi travel mouse or whatever, those are horrible for your wrist health. Okay, then for your hands, typing is basically very similar. You want them to hang down. Laptop keyboards are pretty bad because they force your hands to be together. So like when you're gaming, you can have your hand basically straight out from your arm. It doesn't have to come in like this. When I'm at a laptop, like they're coming in like this, right? So sometimes it's really bad. And then when I'm using, let's say I'm using the trackpad, like this is my wrist angle. That's really, really bad. So like when I'm using the trackpad, I want it to be here, but then when I'm typing, I want it to be here. So when I use the trackpad, I try to keep my wrist straight and I try to bend my arm, but then that means I'm using it at the wrong angle for the trackpad. So you kind of get used to that. Yeah, so that's my basic ergonomics advice. Hands placement on the table, I would say you want your keyboard hand to be straight down from your shoulder, and then you want your mouse hand to be straight down from your shoulder, and you want to do the gross motor movement mouse thing if possible. So you want to have like lower DPI, not higher DPI. So when you move the mouse like a little bit, and it moves a lot, you're mostly going to be controlling it with your wrist, okay? But you want to have it like lower sensitivity so that you're basically controlling it with your arm, more or less. The reason being that you have more specific control, like with your arm, and it can be smoother, and also it's healthier. And if you're worried about I think it should be faster if I move with my wrist, like remember that all calligraphy, all art, calligraphy, and handwriting calligraphy, Eastern or Western, doesn't matter, is done with the full arm, brush strokes, okay? This is where you get that finite, like very, very nice control, is like through the full system, okay? It's just a different system. If you're not good at it yet, it's because you haven't mastered it yet. It's because you haven't mastered the coordination of these huge muscles into very small movements, okay? So just because like you're doing it with your wrist and the wrist is smaller doesn't make it more accurate. You want to use your whole arm to move your mouse around. And if you're not accurate yet, you should just switch the system now and get used to it, unless you're like a pro challenger player and you rely on your wrist for guidance, in which case you're kind of screwed. But in college, when I was playing CS 1.6, I basically switched from like super sensitivity, so just controlling like this, to gross sensitivity, so I would control with my arm. And it took maybe 6 months of adjustment, and then I was back to really, really good aim and, you know, doing well against national ranked players. So it just takes a little bit of relearning the motor movements. Yeah, so, and it's really important for your health, for your wrist health. My wrists have alternately been really bad and really good. And my lower back health as well. My lower back is basically screwed from having a desk job. And then I got an occupational therapy visit, and they taught me how to sit. And then I started doing exercise, and then I started getting a standing desk, and now I sit much better and much more straight. And if you want a perfect sitter, check out Robert Yip from Immortals. He never ever sits any way but perfect, basically, as far as I can tell. Even at a restaurant, you know, everybody else will be like, ah, and he'll just go, broad, straight. It's like he replaced his backbones with a freaking steel pole. Okay. Good question.
Anonymous asks, how can I stop from autopiloting?
The only way to stop autopiloting is by pulling yourself out of the moment. So you have to get good at that. You have to get good at body awareness, okay? Awareness of outside of the game. So the way that I stopped autopiloting was, and the way that I train it now is body awareness, which starts with seated meditation. So go to mindgames.gg/Mac, M-A-C, to see the Mac program, or you can go to headspace.com, and you can do some of this mindfulness stuff that takes you through awareness of your body. You can do body scanning meditation. And then you want to, like, when you're playing, like, be aware of your breath and what your body feels like. And you can use that to realize that it's you outside of the computer playing the video game, manipulating the instruments, instead of you, the champion, inside the avatar inside the screen, and you're seeing it like you're totally invested in the moment. So you want to be able to like step back but maintain focus so that you can kind of see what's happening. And that's how you stop autopilot. Tips and tricks to kind of pull yourself out, like set an alarm for whatever at 15 minutes in the game to kind of like remind you. Set a couple of them. Go to like get Dwayne Johnson's voices from his new alarm clock app that he's like playing songs for you, and set little alarm clocks or timers or whatever that like yell at you. You can record people yelling at you to pay attention and put those on timers. So yeah, I would use hacks like timers and things that interrupt you, and then I would use training. So body awareness is what they call it in sports psych research, becoming more aware of your body so that at any moment you kind of like feel what you're doing.
Justin asks, how do you control your emotions to stay cool and calm when your team is behind?
So I wouldn't control emotions. I would say you want your behavior and your actions to stay cool and calm. But is that necessarily true? Because like teams at Worlds that don't remain cool and calm, they get super hypey and they like perform really well. So I think this cool and calm thing is maybe like a misunderstanding of what you need to perform well. First of all, you can't control your emotions. So you shouldn't worry about controlling your emotions to be cool and calm. Internally, you can have all sorts of emotions. You want those to focus your behavior. Then your behavior, does your team need a cool and calm and collected captain, or are they all becoming resigned to their fate and they need somebody to hype them up? That's the question you should ask. So if your team is really stressed out and hypey, and you want to be like the cool, calm voice, like, okay guys, like we got this, like just relax and stop blaming each other and like focus, then that's what you need. And you just think of like, imagine what it looks like. Imagine the behavior that looks like cool and calm that would be perfect in your mind, and like describe it. Maybe write it down in a journal. Maybe record it in a video to yourself, reflecting like, this is what it would look like if I was perfectly cool and perfectly calm in a game and we were behind and I had an amazing comeback. And then just do that next game. Internally, your emotions will be like, whatever. Just do the behavior externally and you'll be cool and calm. And your teammates will go, wow, he's so cool and calm. You'll be like, yes, I am. And inside you'll be like,
James asks, is there a reason doing something new is harder when you have expectations going into it?
Your expectations guide your like excitement level, essentially. Like let's say you're doing something new and you're like, you build up this like false reality, and then you have what you experience what is called cognitive dissonance between what you imagine reality should be like and what reality is. And this is the root of unhappiness, actually. So if you have no expectations, you can just casually kind of do and experience reality as it manifests and folds. But then you have all of these expectations, you paint a picture of what it should be, and then it is not. And then you're like, my brain is confused because I have this like desire to conform reality to what it should be doing, but it's not doing it. And it leads to unhappiness and cognitive dissonance. And we call these things schema, these expectations and beliefs you have about how the world should work. So I think that these are bad to have, but they're also good to have because they drive you to cope and to apply pressure to yourself to match your expectations. So you want to have those expectations and those goals. Then you want to be able to go into the moment and like focus completely on the experience and like get rid of your expectations and deal with who you are at that moment. Then exit that moment and evaluate and say like, that's who I am right now, but that's not satisfactory to me. That's not who I want to be. I have these expectations of where I should be. And now I'm going to take this unhappiness that I feel after the fact, I'm going to turn it into more training. But then inside the training itself, you have to accept who you are at that moment and be like, this is my level of who I am right now. That's what I have to deal with. And then afterwards, you turn it into drive. Okay, so that's the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in, checking it out, and I'll see you next time for episode 78.